Emily Carter, I reject you as my mate. Ethan Blackwood's voice carried through Moon Hall, calm enough to make the words hurt more. Emily did not move. Neither did the hundreds of wolves gathered beneath the crystal lights and ancient silver crest of Blackwood Kingdom. Then something happened Ethan had not expected. His wolf surged inside him with a single, overwhelming instinct. Stop. Ethan's fingers tightened against the arm of his chair. He ignored the warning. Beyond the tall windows, headlights from waiting cars swept across the palace courtyard as guests prepared to leave after the ceremony. Inside, every face remained turned toward Emily. She could feel their judgment without hearing a word. An Omega with almost no scent. No powerful family. No territory. No political value. The Royal Council had repeated those facts until they sounded like truth. Emily kept her chin raised, though her fingers had gone cold around the moon pendant at her throat. She had imagined rejection before. She had imagined humiliation. She had never imagined Ethan would look at her as if choosing the crown required forgetting every quiet moment they had shared. Do you accept the rejection? The elder asked. Emily searched Ethan's gray eyes. Once, he had remembered that she preferred wild lavender to roses. Once, at a crowded royal dinner, he had noticed her discomfort and moved her chair without drawing attention to her. Small kindnesses. Dangerous kindnesses. They had made her believe he saw the woman everyone else dismissed. Now the king sat where that man should have been. I accept, Emily said. Ethan's wolf went completely still. The sudden silence inside him was worse than the warning. For one strange second, the vast hall felt empty. Emily reached behind her neck and unclasped the pendant. A faint warmth passed through the silver crescent before she closed it inside her palm. Ethan leaned forward. What is that? Something I no longer need here. She turned toward the aisle. Emily. His voice stopped her before she reached the doors. She glanced back. Ethan did not know what he expected to see. Tears, perhaps. Anger. One final attempt to change his mind. Instead, Emily's green eyes held a sadness so controlled that he almost wished she would accuse him of something. Then I hope being king was worth it, she said. The doors closed behind her. Before sunrise, Emily Carter disappeared. No security camera at the palace gates recorded her leaving. No driver reported taking her beyond Blackwood territory. The night clerk at the nearest motel had never seen her. By 7 that morning, Ethan had ordered a search. He told himself it was procedure. His wolf knew better. Emily's cottage stood less than 2 miles from the palace, beside a narrow road lined with pine trees. When Ethan arrived, the rooms were neat and nearly empty. Her books were gone. Her winter coat was missing. The lavender beside the kitchen window had been watered. Nothing suggested panic. Emily had not run. She had prepared to vanish. Beneath the kitchen table, Ethan noticed a small wooden box. His name was written across the lid in Emily's handwriting. Ethan. Nothing more. He crouched and placed his hand against the wood. Warmth moved into his fingertips, subtle but unmistakable, and his wolf stirred again. Ethan carried the box back to the palace. He placed it on his desk beneath the morning light and stared at it for a long time. He could have opened it then. Instead, he locked it inside the bottom drawer. Ethan believed he was postponing an answer until he was ready. He did not yet understand that some answers become more expensive with time. For 6 days, Ethan left the box untouched. He buried himself in work instead. Border agreements needed approval. Pack leaders waited for calls. His advisors filled every hour with budgets, territory disputes, and preparations for the Winter Council. It should have been enough to push one missing Omega from his thoughts. It was not. Every evening, Ethan returned to his study and became aware of the locked drawer beneath his desk. He never opened it. He only sat there longer than necessary, remembering Emily's final words. On the 7th morning, Victoria Ashford arrived at the palace in a black sedan with 2 council representatives. Her family controlled valuable land along the western border and everyone around. Ethan seemed convinced she was the answer to a question he had never asked. Victoria was intelligent, polished, and confident in rooms built for power. On paper, she was everything the council wanted in a Luna. During breakfast, she rested her hand near his on the table. Ethan's wolf recoiled before their fingers touched. He pulled his hand away. Victoria noticed. Have I done something wrong? No. Then this is about Emily Carter. Ethan's jaw tightened. Emily has nothing to do with this. Victoria studied him for a moment. If that were true, you would not have answered so quickly. She left before noon. Ethan told himself her observation meant nothing, but that afternoon he found himself walking through the eastern garden. Wild lavender still grew beside the stone path. Emily had once laughed there when the palace gardeners tried to replace it with roses for the third time. Ethan had asked why she cared so much about a few stubborn plants. Because not everything beautiful needs permission to belong, she had said. At the time, he had smiled. Now the memory followed him back inside. The search for Emily continued. Security footage from nearby highways showed nothing useful. Her bank account had not been touched. Her phone had gone inactive before dawn on the morning she vanished. Weeks passed, and each report ended with the same conclusion. No confirmed sighting. No clear destination. No message. Ethan expanded the search beyond Blackwood territory, but ordered his people to remain discreet. He did not want Emily dragged back to a kingdom she had chosen to leave. At least, that was what he told himself. 2 months after the ceremony, his chief advisor placed another report on his desk. There is still no trace of her, Your Majesty. Ethan read the page twice. Keep looking. The advisor hesitated. She may not want to be found. Ethan lifted his eyes. I know. Saying it aloud made the truth harder to avoid. That night, long after the palace offices had gone dark, Ethan opened the bottom drawer. The wooden box sat exactly where he had left it. His name remained on the lid in Emily's handwriting. He reached toward it, then stopped. His wolf stirred with a low uneasiness that had become familiar since her disappearance. Ethan could command councils, settle disputes, and face rooms full of alphas without hesitation. Yet a box small enough to hold in one hand made him afraid. Because opening it meant allowing Emily to speak when he could no longer interrupt, explain, or change what he had done. He closed the drawer. Winter came. Then spring. The council introduced other possible matches, and Ethan refused every one. Eventually, the search reports became less frequent. Emily Carter was slowly turning from a missing person into a name people no longer expected to hear. But Ethan kept the box. And every full moon, his wolf woke before midnight and faced west, as though somewhere beyond the mountains, something it had lost was still calling. 3 years passed, and Ethan discovered that a person could disappear from a kingdom without disappearing from a life. Emily was absent from Blackwood Palace, yet reminders of her remained in ordinary places. The wild lavender still returned every spring. Her favorite chair remained beside the eastern library window because Ethan never gave anyone permission to move it. Every full moon, his wolf woke restless and faced west until morning. By 34, Ethan had become the king his council once insisted Blackwood needed. Trade routes were stable. The northern packs trusted his judgment. Government meetings ran through secure video calls when travel kept him away from the palace, and his advisors praised the order he had brought to the kingdom. The throne beside him remained empty. Victoria Ashford had stopped accepting invitations long ago. Other introductions followed, but Ethan ended each one before expectations could grow. He could recognize intelligence, kindness, and grace in another woman. His wolf recognized no one. Nearly 1,000 miles west, Emily Carter had learned how to live under another name. In Silver Creek, she was Emily Hale, the healer who opened her clinic before sunrise and sometimes forgot to close it before dinner. The mountain town asked few questions about the past. People cared whether she could calm a frightened child, ease an elderly wolf's fever, or listen without making someone feel small. Her clinic stood beside a family bakery on Main Street, its front window crowded with jars of herbs and bundles of dried lavender. Emily had built the life slowly. One patient, one rented room, one ordinary morning at a time. Some people paid $20. Others brought eggs, bread, apples, or promises to pay later. Emily accepted what they could offer without turning kindness into charity. Silver Creek gave her something Blackwood never had: the freedom to be useful without proving she was worthy first. She laughed more easily now. She had friends who knew nothing about Moon Hall. Most nights, she slept without hearing Ethan's rejection in her dreams. But the past had left one thing she could not pack away. Every full moon, a pale crescent appeared beneath the skin of her left wrist. It never caused pain. It simply warmed as moonlight reached the mountains, reminding her of a bond she had chosen not to use as a chain. Margaret had warned her that distance might soften a Moonborn connection, but it would not erase it. Emily had accepted that. She could carry a mark without letting it carry her. One cold October evening, she was locking the clinic when 8-year-old Noah Miller hurried across the sidewalk with a paper bag pressed against his chest. "Miss Emily, my mom said you forgot your cinnamon rolls." Emily smiled as she took the bag. "Then you just rescued my dinner." Noah laughed, but his attention shifted to her wrist. The cloth band covering the crescent had slipped while she reached for the bag. A faint shimmer showed beneath her skin. Emily pulled the fabric back into place. "Does it hurt?" Noah asked. "No, is it magic?" Emily glanced toward the mountains, where the moon was rising above the dark pines. "Something like that." Noah considered her answer, then asked with complete seriousness, "Does the moon know where you are?" Emily's smile disappeared. Warmth spread beneath the band, stronger than it had been in years. Nearly 1,000 miles away, Ethan sat alone in his study reviewing a late council report. His wolf suddenly lifted its attention toward the west. Ethan stopped reading. From the locked drawer beneath his desk came a soft click. He stared at it. The box had unlocked itself. The box had never opened for him before. Ethan remained motionless behind his desk, listening to the faint click that had broken the silence of the study. His wolf was alert but strangely calm, as though it had been waiting for this moment far longer than he had. Ethan reached for the drawer. Before his hand touched it, his phone rang. The Royal Infirmary appeared on the screen. "Your Majesty," a physician said when Ethan answered, "Margaret Carter arrived this evening for an appointment with Dr. Daniel Hayes. She became faint in the lobby. She is stable, but she asked that you be informed." Ethan stood. Margaret had avoided Blackwood Palace since Emily disappeared. Why is she here? Dr. Hayes has treated her heart condition for years. She returned for her annual examination. 20 minutes later, Ethan entered a private room in the infirmary. Margaret rested against several pillows, irritated by the monitors surrounding her, but otherwise alert. Beside her stood Daniel Hayes, a silver-haired healer in his late 60s whose name Ethan recognized from old royal medical records. Ethan carried the wooden box under one arm. Margaret noticed it immediately. "You kept it." "I never opened it." Her expression tightened. "Of course you did not." Daniel turned at the sound of her voice. His attention shifted to the crescent carved into the box, and his professional calm disappeared. "Where did you get that?" "Emily left it for me." Daniel stepped closer. "May I?" Ethan placed the box on a table. The healer examined the crescent without touching it. "I have seen this mark once before." Margaret closed her eyes. Ethan caught the exchange between them. "You knew Emily." Daniel exhaled. "She came to me shortly before the rejection ceremony." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "For what?" Daniel glanced toward Margaret, who gave a reluctant nod. She wanted confirmation of something she had begun to suspect about her bloodline. Ethan remembered the stories of old Omega families whose abilities had faded from history. What bloodline? Moonborn. The word landed softly, but Ethan's. Wolf responded at once. Daniel continued. Most people believe the Moonborn line ended generations ago. It did not. Some descendants learned to hide what they were because their bonds made them valuable to people who cared more about power than choice. Ethan turned toward Margaret. Emily was Moonborn. "Emily is Moonborn," Margaret corrected. Ethan returned his attention to the box. The latch now rested open. He lifted the lid. There was no farewell note on top. Instead, he found medical records, a folded family document, and a sealed certificate bearing Daniel Hayes' signature. Ethan stared at the name. "You confirmed it." 11 days before the ceremony, Daniel said. Ethan broke the seal. The first page documented Emily's lineage. The second described an unusual mate response that standard scent tests had failed to identify. Then he reached the final line. Confirmed fated pair, Emily Carter and Ethan Blackwood. The room seemed to narrow around him. Ethan read it again. Then a third time. She knew. Margaret did not answer immediately. She did not need to. Ethan lifted another sheet from the box. Emily's handwriting appeared beneath the formal record. "I will not use fate to take away his choice." His wolf became completely still. Ethan remembered her standing alone in Moon Hall, surrounded by people who had already decided she was not enough. She had possessed proof that could have changed everything. She had chosen not to use it. Ethan raised his eyes to Daniel. Why would she do that? Daniel's face held no judgment, only sadness. Because there is something about a Moonborn bond that you were never told. A Moonborn bond cannot be completed by proof alone, Daniel said. Ethan remained beside the table, Emily's certificate still in his hand. Then what completes it? Daniel pulled a chair closer, but did not sit. A free choice. Most wolves recognize a fated mate through scent, instinct, or an immediate bond response. Moonborn omegas are different. Their scent can remain unusually faint, sometimes for years. The connection stays incomplete until the other person chooses them without being compelled by rank, prophecy, or evidence. Ethan's eyes dropped. To Emily's handwritten line, "I will not use fate to take away his choice." So if she had shown me this certificate before the ceremony, you might have accepted her because you believed you were supposed to, Daniel said. Emily would never have known whether you wanted her or simply obeyed what the bond demanded. Margaret shifted against her pillows. "I told her to show you." Ethan turned toward her. She refused. Immediately, Margaret's tired eyes settled on him. "She came to me after Daniel confirmed everything. She was frightened, but she was hopeful too. She believed the way you treated her when no one was watching meant something." Ethan remembered the garden, the library, the dinners where Emily had sat beyond the council's attention. He had noticed how easily conversation came with her, how his wolf settled when she entered a room. He had mistaken peace for insignificance because it did not arrive with the force he expected from fate. "Why take that risk?" he asked. Margaret's answer came without hesitation. Because she wanted Ethan to choose her. Not the Alpha King, not the council, not the moon. Ethan unfolded the remaining page. Emily's handwriting filled less than half of it. She wrote that she understood the crown came with obligations. She knew alliances mattered and that Blackwood expected its Luna to bring visible strength. She would never ask Ethan to abandon his kingdom for her. But if he ever chose her, she wanted one certainty. She wanted to know he had seen Emily Carter before anyone told him she was important. Ethan stopped reading. The memory of Moon Hall returned with painful clarity. Emily standing alone. The council watching. His own voice making a decision he had called responsible. She had carried evidence that could have silenced every objection. Yet she had protected his freedom to choose even when that freedom could hurt her. "She gave me the truth without forcing me to know it," Ethan said. Daniel nodded. "And you answered without it." There was no accusation in the healer's voice. None was necessary. Ethan walked to the infirmary window. Blackwood Palace rose beyond the trees, its upper floors glowing against the night. He had spent years believing leadership meant knowing what had value before everyone else did. Emily had asked for something simpler. To be seen without needing a certificate to make her worthy. "Where is she?" Margaret's expression changed. "Why?" "Because I need to apologize. That does not require her to come back." Ethan faced her. "I know." Margaret studied him carefully. "And if she has built a life without you?" His answer took longer. "Then I will not destroy it to make myself feel forgiven." The room fell silent. Daniel glanced at Margaret. At last, she reached toward the bedside table and took out her phone. She opened a photograph and handed it to Ethan. Emily stood outside a small clinic beneath a sign that read Silver Creek Community Healing. She was smiling beside a group of children. Ethan had not seen that smile in 3 years. "She uses the name Emily Hale," Margaret said. "Silver Creek is nearly 1,000 miles west." Ethan stared at the photograph. Relief came first. Emily was alive. Then came something harder to accept. She looked at home. He returned the phone to Margaret and picked up Emily's letter. For years, Ethan had imagined finding her as the end of his regret. Now he understood that finding her would only bring him to the place where earning nothing was guaranteed. Silver Creek appeared beneath a clear morning sky after nearly 1,000 miles of highway, and Ethan immediately understood why Emily had stayed. There were no palace towers above the mountains, no royal banners along Main Street, and no one seemed interested in the stranger stepping from a dark sedan near the edge of town. Ethan had left his security team at a hotel 10 miles away with instructions to remain there unless he called. His chief advisor held temporary authority over routine matters in Blackwood, while Ethan continued receiving daily reports and joining council meetings by secure video. He had come to Silver Creek with an apology, not an escort. He found Emily's clinic beside a family bakery just before 9. Bundles of lavender filled the front window. Ethan stopped on the sidewalk. His wolf sensed her presence before he saw her. The restlessness that had followed him for years vanished, replaced by an awareness so deep that the sounds of Main Street seemed to fall away. Then the clinic door opened. Emily stepped outside carrying a basket of medicine bottles. Her chestnut hair fell past her shoulders now. She wore a simple green coat and comfortable shoes, and there was a confidence in the way she moved that Blackwood had never allowed to fully emerge. She seemed settled, whole. The sight brought Ethan relief and an ache he had no right to resent. Emily turned and stopped. For several seconds, neither spoke. Emily. Her green eyes moved from his face to the empty sidewalk behind him, perhaps searching for guards. Your Majesty. The formality landed exactly where she intended. I came alone. You are still the king. Yes, but I did not come to give you an order. Emily placed the basket on a table beside the door. Then why are you here? Ethan had rehearsed the answer through hundreds of miles of driving. None of those sentences survived her expression. I opened the box. Something in her face hardened. After 3 years. Far too late. And now you know. About the Moonborn line. About Daniel's certificate. About the bond. Emily folded her arms against the morning cold. There was no us after Moonhall. Ethan accepted the words without arguing. You are right. That seemed to surprise her. He continued. I let the council measure you by rank, scent, family name, and political advantage. Then I accepted their judgment because it was easier than questioning my own. Emily held his gaze. You had plenty of chances to know me before that ceremony. I did, and I failed you anyway. A delivery truck rolled slowly along Main Street behind them. Ethan drew a breath. I am sorry, Emily. Not because a certificate says you were my fated mate. I am sorry because you should never have needed one for me to recognize your worth. Her composure shifted for only a moment. What do you want? I hoped you might consider returning to Blackwood. No, his wolf stirred, but Ethan remained where he was. All right. Emily blinked. That is it. You gave me your answer. You traveled nearly 1,000 miles. Distance does not buy me the right to change your mind. She studied him as if searching for the king who once believed responsibility justified everything. You discovered what I am, Ethan. Moonborn. Rare. Your fated mate. Suddenly the Omega everyone dismissed has a bloodline important enough to matter. That is not why you matter. Maybe you believe that now. But you still do not know who I became after I left. Ethan glanced through the clinic window. Children's drawings covered one wall. A basket of apples sat beneath a handwritten thank you card. This was not where Emily had hidden from Blackwood. This was where she had rebuilt herself. Then let me learn, he said. Emily shook her head. You cannot learn me in one conversation. Then I will not pretend I can. She picked up the basket. What happens now? Ethan stepped aside, leaving the clinic entrance open. If you allow me, I will remain in town for a while. I will not interfere with your clinic or ask you for anything. If you want me gone, say the word. Emily paused at the doorway. Kings are used to controlling endings. Ethan met her eyes. That may be exactly what I need to unlearn. Ethan stayed, but he did not make Emily responsible for his decision. He rented a modest room above the Silver Creek General Store, where the floorboards creaked beneath every step and delivery trucks arrived before sunrise. Each morning, he joined Blackwood's counsel through secure video, reviewed reports from his chief advisor, signed whatever required royal approval, and handled the responsibilities he had refused to abandon. When the work was finished, he closed the laptop and returned to a town where his title carried surprisingly little weight. Emily expected his patience to last a few days. Silver Creek was nothing like the world Ethan knew. There were no formal dinners, no advisors waiting outside doors, and no room that became silent when he entered. Mrs. Miller stopped him in the bakery to complain about the price of flour. Noah asked whether Kings had homework and seemed disappointed when Ethan said they did. The general store owner charged him full price, called him sir, and asked him to carry 2 boxes inside when a delivery arrived early. Ethan did it without hesitation. More importantly, he never appeared at Emily's clinic unless she invited him. He simply began noticing the people around it. An elderly Omega drove nearly 60 miles because a larger pack clinic had pushed back her appointment 3 times. A young healer named Rachel explained that she had earned higher test scores than several beta applicants, but had still been denied advanced certification. One afternoon, a father entered the clinic with $12 in his wallet and embarrassment written across his face. His daughter needed medicine he could not afford. Emily accepted $6, gave him what the child needed, then added a loaf of bread from the bakery without making him feel like he had received charity. Ethan waited until they were gone. How often does that happen? Emily returned several bottles to the shelf. Often enough. And the other clinics? Some are good. Some still decide who deserves attention by rank. That evening, Ethan opened Blackwood's medical regulations instead of the trade proposal waiting on his screen. He read policies he had approved without ever considering who might be excluded by them. None openly said an Omega deserved less. They did not have to. Local councils could favor higher ranks for training programs, clinic placements, and public appointments, and the results had been hiding behind neutral language for years. Ethan called his chief advisor. Over the next 2 weeks, he ordered a formal review of rank-based restrictions across royal services. He authorized scholarship funding for rural healers, required equal certification standards, and established an independent process for discrimination complaints. He made no speech about Emily. He attached her name to nothing. Emily discovered the reforms when an official notice arrived at the clinic on a rainy Thursday morning. She read every page before finding Ethan that evening behind the general store, helping the owner move boxes beneath an awning. You changed the healer regulations. Ethan set down the last box. They needed changing. Because of me? You made me notice what I should have. Noticed years ago. But the rules were wrong before I came here. Emily studied him. What if I never return to Blackwood? The reforms continue. What if I never forgive you? Pain crossed his face before he answered. They still continue. She had expected regret. She had expected persistence. She had even prepared herself for the possibility that Ethan would eventually use fate as his final argument. She had not prepared for him to change something that offered no guarantee of bringing her back. Beneath the cloth around her wrist, the crescent grew warm. Emily resisted the old instinct to hide it. Ethan noticed, but stayed where he was. Rain tapped against the awning between them. For years, Emily had needed to know whether Ethan could see her worth without fate telling him where to look. Now a harder question had taken its place. Could he become a better man, even if becoming one earned him nothing from her? Against the defenses that had protected her since Moon Hall, Emily was beginning to believe he could. The question followed Emily home that night. For 3 years, she had trained herself not to build tomorrow around Ethan Blackwood. She had learned how to wake without wondering whether he regretted Moon Hall, how to make decisions without imagining what Blackwood would think, and how to belong somewhere without waiting for anyone to declare her worthy. Now Ethan had done something she had never prepared herself for. He had changed without asking her to reward him. The following afternoon, Emily found him outside the general store finishing a call with his chief advisor. His travel bag rested just inside the doorway. "You are leaving," she said. Ethan slipped his phone into his coat pocket. "Tomorrow morning." The answer came too easily, and she disliked how much that bothered her. "Why?" "Blackwood needs me there." Budget negotiations begin next week, and several pack leaders requested an in-person council session. Emily glanced at the bag. "So after all this, you simply go home?" Ethan studied her expression. "I came here to apologize and to understand what I failed to see. I cannot turn that into a reason to remain until you give me the answer I want. You stayed for weeks. Because you allowed me to." His voice softened. "If I keep waiting outside your life, eventually my patience becomes another kind of pressure." Emily folded her arms against the cold. "You traveled nearly 1,000 miles. You changed laws your council accepted for years. And you expect nothing. I expect to live with the consequences of what I chose." She searched his face for the old certainty, the alpha king who had once believed duty made every decision defensible. She could not find him. "Why did you really come to Silver Creek?" Ethan glanced toward the clinic across Main Street. "At first, because I discovered the truth about the bond. But that only told me what fate saw. Being here showed me what I failed to see." Emily said nothing. "You remember which children are afraid of doctors. You keep food in the clinic for families too proud to ask for help. You know exactly how much kindness someone can accept without feeling small. People trust you because you never make them earn dignity first." His eyes returned to hers. "I should have known that woman before Moon Hall." The crescent beneath Emily's sleeve warmed, but she kept her attention on him. "You cannot erase what happened there. No. You cannot return the years I spent rebuilding my life. No. And you cannot know whether I will ever trust you enough to come back." Ethan drew a slow breath. "That is yours to decide." Nothing more followed. No mention of prophecy. No reminder that she was his fated mate. No promise that destiny would eventually bring her to him. Emily had spent years protecting her freedom from a man who once failed to choose her. Now he was protecting that same freedom from himself. Before sunrise the next morning, Ethan checked out of his room above the general store. The town was still dark except for the bakery lights glowing across Main Street. His security team waited in a sedan near the highway. Ethan placed his bag in the trunk and paused beside the passenger door. He had told Emily she did not need to say goodbye, and he meant it. His wolf was restless, but Ethan opened the door anyway. Then footsteps sounded behind him, quick against the cold pavement. Ethan. His hand stopped. Not your majesty. Not Alpha King. Ethan. He turned. Emily stood about 30 feet away, catching her breath. One sleeve had slipped back from her wrist, revealing the pale crescent beneath her skin. Ethan barely noticed the mark. What held him still was the woman wearing it. Emily had spent 3 years walking away from the choice he made in Moonhall. Now, beneath the first light over Silver Creek, she was walking toward him because the next choice belonged entirely to her. Emily stopped a few feet from Ethan, breathing hard from the run. The morning cold made each breath visible, and behind them Silver Creek was beginning another ordinary day. Ethan released the car door and faced her, but he did not move closer. Emily noticed. Once, she had stood in Moonhall while he decided whether she belonged in his future. Now he waited for her decision. I am not asking you to stay, she said. Ethan nodded. All right. And I am not promising to return as your Luna. I understand. Emily searched his face for disappointment that might become persuasion. It never did. If I return someday, it will not be because a certificate says I belong beside you. And I will not become valuable because Blackwood finally discovered my bloodline. You were valuable before any of us knew what Moonborn meant. Her throat tightened. I will not stand behind your throne while other people decide when my voice matters. Ethan held her gaze. Then never stand behind me. Stand beside me, if that is what you choose. The crescent on Emily's wrist grew warm, but this moment no longer belonged to the mark. You cannot promise you will never make another mistake. I cannot. You cannot make Moonhall disappear. No, and you cannot give me back the life I had to rebuild. No, Emily felt tears gather in her eyes. Ethan did not offer impossible promises. Somehow, that made his next words easier to believe. I can keep becoming a man who listens before he judges. Emily stepped forward and extended her hand. Ethan waited before taking it, leaving her one final chance to pull away. She did not. Warmth passed through their joined hands, and the crescent beneath her skin brightened once before settling into a pale silver trace. Ethan's wolf became peaceful, but his attention remained on Emily. What happens now, he asked. You go home and lead your kingdom. Surprise touched his face. And you? I go back to my clinic. A small smile appeared through her tears. This is a beginning, Ethan, not an ending. In the months that followed, Blackwood's reforms reached far beyond Silver Creek. An independent review uncovered officials who had repeatedly favored rank over merit in healer certifications and public clinic appointments. Those who had abused their authority lost the power to make those decisions, and new standards required every applicant to be judged by the same qualifications. Ethan refused to call the reforms a gift to Emily. They were a correction Blackwood owed to everyone it had failed. When Emily returned to the kingdom months later, she did not abandon Silver Creek. She divided her time between her clinic and a new medical access program serving distant pack communities. Her first official visit brought her back to Moonhall. Several council members who had once watched her rejection were waiting inside. The silence felt familiar, but Emily did not. One elder approached, his expression uneasy. Lady Moonborn, on behalf of the council, Emily Carter, she said gently. The elder stopped. Emily met his eyes without anger. Emily Carter is enough. No one corrected her. No one looked toward Ethan for permission. The council had spent years measuring worth through rank, bloodline, territory, and political advantage. Now they stood before the woman they had dismissed and saw what their measurements had failed to recognize. Ethan was not seated on the throne. He stood near the same doors Emily had once walked through alone. When she reached him, he offered his hand. He did not pull her forward. He waited. Emily glanced toward the throne, then at the man beside her. Do you remember what I said when I left this hall? Ethan's eyes softened. You hoped being king was worth it. Was it? He looked across the chamber, at the council now governed by rules that demanded dignity before rank, then back at her. It took losing you to teach me that being king was never supposed to be about proving my power. It was supposed to be about what I did with it. Emily placed her hand in his. This time, she entered Moon Hall beside him. Not because she was Moonborn. Not because fate had named her his mate. Not because a kingdom had finally decided she was worthy. She walked beside Ethan because both of them had learned what the old laws never could. Destiny might open a door, but love required choice, and justice meant making sure the next forgotten person would never have to disappear before someone recognized their worth.